I always prefer to lay out all my materials for whatever fly I'm going to be tying. In this case, the little black stone. I use a peacock roll for that. I use a brown speckled soft hen saddle. I use that a lot for many different flies. Uh, get my scissors, my whip finisher, wax if you need it, head cement, hair stacker. Won't be using the wax or the hair stacker on this particular fly, but it's always good to have those things laid out. If you're going to use dubbing, I like to get a dubbing box with different colors set out. So everything's at the ready and you can quickly access everything you want to tie. It's always good to prepare a little bit for every pattern that you're going to tie. I really like, for any kind of fly, a rotating head vise. This is a Renzetti. There are other styles that work similarly, but that's the kind of vise that I'm going to use on this fly and most of my flies actually. My favorite little black stone for Great Lakes steelhead and trout fishing is really about a size 10 fly, but I tie it on a heavy wire short shank number 6 hook. And as a comparison, you can take a look at the flies on the left that I prefer for the steelhead compared to more traditional black stonefly patterns, including the giant stones and the mediums, and even a kind of a small, people would call a small black stone. Even that's a little bigger than I prefer, so that would be my preferred fly right there. I like to use a Daiichi 1510 hook, and that's a short shank number 6 hook, which compared to a Daiichi 1530 size 8, you can tell it's a little bigger hook gap, about the same shaft length, maybe even a bit shorter than the size 8. I do also like that size 8 on occasion, but that's my go-to hook right there, size 6 1510 Daiichi. Extra short shank, heavy wire hook. It'll hold up to the fight that you'll get with a steelhead or a big trout. So okay, okay. Now this series is geared for the beginner or intermediate fly tyer. I'll try and include a few tips on just the way I do things, the way you would probably do them if you were tying flies professionally, which I used to do. So a lot of what I do comes from that task. So to start this black stonefly, I'm using 8/0 unithread. I like it. It's a really small diameter thread. It's pretty strong and it doesn't bulk up too much. So I've attached that to the hook about a third of the way back from the eye. I'm going to cut a section of pheasant tail fibers for the tail. That'll also act as the wing case for the back of the stonefly. This fly is not what I would call a highly realistic fly. It's more impressionistic. In fact, most of the flies that I use are impressionistic. I think they tend to be a little more effective. I like them better. So I'm gonna start off. I'm gonna tie in that pheasant tail fiber where I started my thread. I'm gonna leave enough hanging over, probably about equal to the length of the hook shaft beyond the bend to act as tail fibers for that stonefly. And I'm gonna overwrap all of that back about even with the barb. That's about where you typically want to end a fly, is about even with the barb. Now I'm going to go right back to where I started. For the body on this fly, I am using what's called easy dubbing. It's from Orvis. Comes in different colors. I like the black or charcoal gray for this fly. It's a really fine, it's almost a chenille, but it's even finer than a micro chenille. So I'm going to, right at the very tip of that piece, I'm going to tie that in right there. And I'm going to overwrap that as well, right back to the exact same point. I'm going to wind forward again, and then using my rotating head fly tying vise, a Renzetti vise, I'm just going to quickly wind forward. I don't care much about putting my thread in a cradle for this operation because it's such a fine thread. If it takes a few extra wraps, it doesn't really hurt anything. I will tie that off right there and quickly snip that off. You'll notice that I always keep my scissors in my hand just like this. When you're tying it, it saves a lot of energy and wasted time by bending over to pick up or reaching down to pick up your scissors. So now I'm going to take that pheasant tail fiber and wrap back over just a little bit. For this fly, I typically will, well, I always will use peacock curl for the thorax, the area underneath the wing case. And I'll typically use about 5 or 6 nice quality pheasant tail fibers, or I'm sorry, peacock fibers, and I'll tie them in just like that. Wrap back to your furthest point going backwards, and then wrap forwards. Again, using your Renzetti vise or your rotary head vise, wrap forward to make a nice little ball. Tie that off. Very simple. It's a simple, fast, easy fly. It's a typical nymph that you'd see in any beginner's fly tying book, but the only difference is that it's tied on a heavier wire, larger gat fly designed for steelhead. Our little black stoneflies, in Michigan primarily, but it kind of applies to the Great Lakes region. They're the first stonefly to show, and they usually show up right about when the steelhead fishing is prime, from mid-March to mid-May. You've got a warm, sunny day. Water temperature gets up to about low 40s. These little stoneflies will get really active during the day. They're going to be in the water column moving a lot, and fish will really key on a great brown trout or steelhead fly. So now I've just taken a brown saddle hackle feather, soft hen saddle, folded fibers back, cut it just like that, and then tied that in tip first. And once again, I'm going to wrap that with my rotary head vise. I'm only going to do about 2 full wraps. I don't want a ton of hackle right there. I just want enough to suggest some legs for a stonefly, and you'll see that's pretty sparse. I'm going to fold everything back, overwrap it to lock it in place, and typically you can just pop that piece right out. Don't even need your scissors. Such a fine stem on that. And then to finish the fly, I'm going to fold those legs down slightly, pull those pheasant tail fibers left over from the tail forward, tie them off, wrap a few wraps over to lock them in, fold that up, tie it off. Then wrap over to make a small but neat head on the fly. You know, stoneflies have kind of a fat head, so you can put a little extra wrap on there if you want to. Finish it off by whip finishing. Usually do a couple, one on top of the other, and the life of a steelhead fly, especially if you're guiding or if you really are into fishing a lot, is very short. So a fast fly to tie is really important to me. An impressionistic fly is important to me because I think they actually are more effective. You know, the really detailed flies you'll see in a fly shop are great for attracting fishermen, and sometimes they're great fish catchers too, but generally speaking, a simple impressionistic fly like this little black stonefly that I've just tied tend to work better than anything else. I don't even bother putting head cement on here because our rivers are full of snags and areas to hook your fly and lose your fly. So my goal is to fill a box up with these. When I go out on the river steelhead fishing, I've got 4 or 5 main patterns that I stick with, little blackstone being one of them. I want to have at least a dozen of these in my box, if not 2 dozen in my box when I head out to the river. The Pere Marquette River in western Michigan, Lower Peninsula, is one of my favorite steelhead and trout streams. Early season, you'll see many little black stones emerging, crawling up on the rocks and logs and then flying around the river. So they're very active in the water column prior to that as well. So great pattern, and try it. We usually fish them in tandem. I'll use this and a little green caddis or an egg or a hex nymph pattern. And I will come back and do series on some of my other favorite steelhead and trout flies for the Great Lakes, Midwest, and Michigan. Thanks. Hope you liked it. Hope you learned something. Please like and subscribe, and come check us out again for more fly tying instructionals. And you can always check us out at backcountrylife.net. Okay, so you'll note that that fly looks a lot like a mayfly, typical mayfly nymph. So I'm going to show you just a little different version of this. If you really, really want it to be a little more stonefly looking, which I don't really think you need, but if you want that, this is a slightly different version, shorter tail, and the body, abdomen area will curve a little bit. And anyone who's ever picked up a stonefly, a real stonefly, will know that their tails are short relative to, say, a mayfly nymph. And pretty often their body is curved when they're floating in the water. So I'm going to just quickly do another version of that fly. It's just about the same, but just wraps down the bend of the hook just a little bit. So I'm not going to narrate anymore. I'm just going to tie the fly real quick, and you can be the judge if you like this version better. I don't bother with this. The first version is my go-to, and it works really well. Caught probably hundreds of steelhead and trout on that fly. So just watch, and I'll whip this one out real fast. Remember that this is intended to be a fast and easy fly to tie. Really fast and really easy. And it's not super critical about being neat and tidy. Speed is what you're really going for. And obviously you want to catch fish, but trust me, it catches fish. And impressionistic flies in general, I think, catch more fish than the super accurate, super detailed flies that take a hell of a long time to tie, for one. So if you're a serious fly fisherman, those don't always serve you as well, because you spend a lot of time tying flies and don't end up with as many flies for your efforts. As you can see, this is a very quick fly to tie. And same fly, slightly different. Short tail, slightly curved body. Other than that, simple, fast, and effective. You choose which version you like. I prefer the first, but this is not bad either. So thanks again for watching.